The Chicago Bears have over 25 players set to hit free agency this spring, but only a few of them are really high priorities to re-sign, and they shouldn't really break the bank either.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. On the show today, we're going to go through the Chicago Bears' upcoming free agents that should be a priority to re-sign. The guys who you really got to make sure you get them under contract before they have a chance to hit the open market and negotiate elsewhere. Plus some other guys that, sure, it'd be nice to bring back if the price is right, but you can kind of live without it if things don't quite line up and see eye to eye. And some other guys that you like to bring back that are cheap, but just glue guys that it'd be nice to make a priority that you don't also have to spend big bucks to keep them around, but sure would be nice to have them back on your roster for at least 2026 to keep some continuity, even if it's a little bit farther down the depth chart. I do want to thank you for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. And if you want to take your listening to the next level, you can check out the Locked On Bears Everydayers Club, where you can get access to an ad-free audio feed of Locked On Bears. It's compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it, all the podcast platforms. If you want to check it out, you can go to lockedonbears.supercast.com to find out more. But when I look at the full list of Bears free agents, there's only a couple guys that really jump out at me as like, these are the high priority guys you have to re-sign. I think there's some other even potentially bigger names that I'm more than willing to let walk this offseason, and we'll talk about those players in particular on tomorrow's show. But today I want to focus on the guys that you do strongly want to bring back. One of them, very obvious. The other one, less of a big name, but I think just as important of a re-signing as far as the top priority guys. And for me, it's Kevin Byard first and foremost at the safety position. We've talked about it before on this podcast, but all four of the Chicago Bears safeties currently on the team are set to be free agents this offseason. There's going to be at least some amount of turnover there. Now, you want to try and minimize some of that and have some kind of continuity on the back end, because these are all guys that now have a year of experience in Dennis Allen's defense. And if you bring in four brand new guys, everyone's going to have a little bit more of a learning curve trying to come back and get back into this thing. But Byard, to me, is the priority to re-sign for a few different reasons. I mean, first of all, he's going to be the cheaper of the two options. Jaquan Brisker, as a younger player with a longer career still in front of him, is likely to command a much bigger contract than Byard, who is on the wrong side of 30 and at some point will slow down more and more. He's 32, will turn 33 in August. And so you're not going to tie your wagon to Byard on a 5-year deal necessarily. And as a result, those older players tend to get less money in free agency. That Byard may end up getting something fairly similar to what the Bears got him for right now. Maybe a slight raise, but you're looking at 7, 8, 9, maybe as much as at most $10 million for a year or two, per season to keep him around. But also, like, he's the one that's coming off of the even better, more impactful season. Like, Byard was clearly your best safety this past season, led safeties in the NFL in terms of interceptions and turnovers this past season. I mean, we don't have to sit here and rehash how great Kevin Byard was. This was a fountain of youth type of rejuvenation season, and he does deserve to be rewarded for that with a new contract. You want to be careful not to lock yourself into a bunch of long-term guaranteed money, but I'm willing to give him, the full first year guaranteed at whatever that number ends up being, $7, $8, $9, $10 million. And then, at least another year behind that maybe is a lot less guaranteed in case, there is a age regression or injuries or whatever, that you do want to be able to get out of that contract eventually. But to me, like, Byard is someone you want to prioritize bringing back to kind of be that bridge to whatever the future of your safety position is going to be. Like, I want to pair Kevin Byard with not only another free agent safety to be your starter, but then also a draft pick at the safety position. And you feel like, all right, Byard will start this season, and then next year, 2027, either Byard is still playing really well and he starts again, or that second, third round pick you use at safety is ready to take over, and then you transition from Byard from there, while still getting to reward Byard for next year for the big season he had in your defense. It just feels like the scheme fit is there, the leadership fit is there, the level of play is still high, and the price should be manageable to say he's someone that you want to stick around and have at least sort of transition to whatever the future is going to be at the safety position of your roster. And then if you bring in a veteran free agent to pair next to him, Byard can help show him the ropes and can help show the rookie the ropes and whatever backup safeties you end up having next season. Like, he can be just some sort of continuity and glue at that spot to help tide you over into the future. Even if he's not the long-term future, he can still be your short-term future at the position. It's not exactly the same in terms of career stage, but the other priority free agent I think I would want to make an early emphasis to re-sign is they also part of this, like, you might have some transition at a position, so let's have him be there to be a part of it. And that's DeMarco Jackson at linebacker. And it does feel weird to say, hey, the priority guy you got to re-sign was someone you just brought in off the practice squad last season and hadn't really been a part of your organization before that and wasn't a starter for most of the season, but did end up starting, what does it end up being, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-ish games over the course of the year, because he ended up starting in the Rams playoff game as well. And when DeMarco Jackson was out there, he was giving you quality linebacker play. That doesn't mean you're going to go ahead of free agency and give DeMarco Jackson some massive payday type of long-term expensive contract extension. But I do think there's a certain value in trying to lock him in now. Like, he's a player I would feel comfortable as a starting linebacker next season. Especially if you're going to release Tremaine Edmonds and save that $15 million in salary cap space, DeMarco Jackson is a guy who, if I went into week 1 with Jackson and TJ Edwards, I would be okay. I wouldn't mind going into free agency and finding a new starter and still making Jackson a backup, but a backup who, the moment there's an injury, he can plug and play. Or if for some reason TJ Edwards' recovery from his injuries has a drop off of play and you need to make a change at some point, like, DeMarco Jackson is a super valuable luxury to have at a really affordable price that I would like to lock in right now. Like, he might not get more than a couple $1 million a year. He's going to get, quote unquote, backup linebacker money. But the level of play we saw on the field for him was starting caliber linebacker play. And so if I can sign a starting caliber linebacker for less than starting linebacker value, I think that's something you can't pass up and need to make a priority. I don't want him to get the opportunity to go to the open market and have some other team that fell in love with DeMarco Jackson from the limited tape we saw this season and bid up that price more and more and more. It helps that there's a decent amount of linebackers in free agency, some veterans in there that I think there's going to be a good supply there to meet the demand. And you add Tremaine Edmonds into that mix, but I think having Jackson in there with TJ Edwards, especially if you're going to let go of Edmonds, just to kind of keep some of that institutional knowledge of Jackson being someone who's worked in Dennis Allen's defenses for a number of years before this, they can help the next linebacker come in and transition there. And if you want to draft another linebacker this year, maybe a little bit higher than Ruben Hippolyte or Noah Sewell were drafted the last couple seasons, again, can be part of that transition from the short-term future to the long-term future. And maybe as DeMarco Jackson continues to develop throughout his career, he could end up being that long-term future. Like, I don't want to sit here and just rave about DeMarco Jackson constantly, but he's only 27, about to turn 28. Like, he's someone who, if he continues to develop in his career, like, as he's entering his prime now, you could see him get better and better. Like, maybe he's never going to become some, like, elite Pro Bowl caliber linebacker or whatever, but someone who could give you 2 or 3 years of starting caliber play at a pretty darn good price. Like, those are the kind of smart, savvy moves that the perennial contending teams make. And DeMarco Jackson absolutely needs to be a big part of that, especially if you are indeed going to release Tremaine Edmonds as a salary cap casualty, like we talked about last week on the podcast in terms of clearing salary cap space. So go back and take a listen to those episodes if you have not yet. But those two are kind of the big name priorities. Like, I'm going to be upset if those guys end up walking or getting the chance to test the open market and sign somewhere else. Everybody else, there's some other guys I want to bring back, but everyone else I can live with and find replacements for, or just maybe they're a little priced out. But I think there's some other guys that if you can get some really good value on them and say, okay, if the price is right and they're not going to go somewhere else and get something more, like if they're cheap and willing to come back and don't just want to spread their wings and go elsewhere. I think there's a handful of other guys that would be really good value, plus a handful of other guys that I think are just good, like, glue guys on the roster that aren't household names, aren't playing a ton, but you just like to have on your 53 because they're reliable. So we'll go through some of the other names that the Bears should make a strong push to bring back next on Locked On Bears.
Hey, it's Matt Derry from the Locked On Lions podcast. The people I love depend on me. If I'm gone, the financial responsibilities don't disappear. I didn't want my family figuring things out during the hardest moment of their lives. That's why I knew only one place to go. I chose life insurance through my friends at Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. I love the folks at Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get the free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Application times and rates may vary.
So I think Byard and Jackson are the guys that, like, gonna hurt if you lose them this offseason. If you're like, wow, that was a missed opportunity to capitalize on value. There's some other guys that, all right, if they're not brought back, not the end of the world. And I suppose it's not the end of the world if you lose Byard or Jackson, but, I feel like you're squandering an opportunity there. But some other guys that, it'd be nice to have them back if things kind of line up the way that you want them to. And each one kind of has different dynamics to explain. Like, some of it's a little bit more about price. Some of it's a little bit more about, do they want to come back and be a part of the team for longer, or do they want to just maybe get a change of scenery and try something a little bit different? But I think, like, the next highest guy on my list here is CJ Gardner-Johnson. He's someone who we had plenty of reservations about when the Bears brought him in, and I think for good reasons. Like, this is not even just like with hindsight, we should have known it was going to work, right? Like, this is someone who has bounced around a number of teams in recent years, has had pretty firm track record of trouble, we'll say, like, within locker rooms, not so much legal trouble, but, like, well-documented things in Houston before he came to the Bears. Like, it's not just, like, anonymous sourcing, but, like, pretty clearly, like, stuff was happening that has been more or less confirmed, and there was some stuff with the Eagles before that. Like, he's been on a bunch of teams for a bunch of seasons for a reason, but he's very clearly a talented player that you want to have around. And there were moments when, it wasn't phenomenal this past season where, like, he got beat sometimes in some games. Like, he is not someone I'm signing to be my every down starting slot cornerback. But I think he is, I don't want to say uniquely valuable to the Chicago Bears, because it's not just the Chicago Bears, but, like, this team and this defense, this scheme in particular, is a better fit, and CJ is a better fit as a player here than it might be in the majority of other teams around the NFL, like specifically with Dennis Allen. It's part of why we had some cautious optimism about him being brought in, albeit with some concerns as well. But, like, knowing that you've got Kyler Gordon locked in as your starter, and Kyler Gordon has some injury history, so it's nice to have a quality, reliable backup in the slot that is not, say, Nick McLeod, who was kind of originally the plan A there this season, who really wasn't worth rostering for much of this season. But to kind of know that, hey, if Kyler Gordon's going to miss a few games, CJ Gardner-Johnson is a competent enough coverage player in the slot to get you by. Again, we're not saying he's going to be great and not make any mistakes or not get beat sometimes, but, like, you can do a lot worse as a backup slot cornerback than CJ Gardner-Johnson. But beyond that, CJ Gardner-Johnson's specific skill set and versatility is something that I think is the perfect type of backup to Kyler Gordon. Because we heard all of last offseason about how Dennis Allen saw a lot of potential for versatility with Kyler Gordon that we didn't get to see during the 2025 season because he was injured for so much of it. But they talked about moving Kyler Gordon around and saying this is a player who will be in the slot sometimes, but we could bounce him out to the outside cornerback sometimes. You could play some safety position sometimes, both strong safety and free safety, and be this sort of jack of all trades versatile defensive weapon type of piece that Dennis Allen can get really creative with. And while CJ Gardner-Johnson is not exactly the same build as Kyler Gordon, he has a similar skill set of versatility that few backup slot cornerbacks do. Like most of the guys with that kind of versatility end up getting starting jobs elsewhere. And CJ Gardner-Johnson hasn't gotten those recently, in large part because of off-field things more than on-field things. But I don't think he was so great in Chicago this season that he's going to get big, free agent offer kind of money to go be a starter again somewhere else. I think there are still enough of a lingering red flag question marks about him. And, it was only, 7 starts, I think 10 games this past season that got him, on the field. Like, it wasn't a humongous playing time sample size there that I think you have a real possibility for his price tag to stay really, really low. Now, I'm only bringing him back at that low price tag, and he has to be willing to take that low price tag. So presumably, he's probably someone who will want to test the open market first. But if that market isn't really there, and he would come back to the Bears for, $2 million a year, a above veteran minimum, but otherwise pretty cheap contract, I think that value there for Chicago is astronomical. For someone who, if you start moving Kyler Gordon around, you could have CJ Gardner-Johnson here, and if Gordon gets hurt, CJ could play like almost the exact same role. He started NFL games at both safety positions as a slot cornerback before. I don't know that he has quite the outside cornerback experience or skills that Kyler Gordon had in college, coming out. But I just think to be able to have a backup that so closely matches what Kyler Gordon does, as opposed to they got Josh Blackwell or Nick McLeod. It's just not quite the same. And because CJ Gardner-Johnson is such an effective blitzer the way Kyler Gordon is, CJ Gardner-Johnson is so physical against the run the way Kyler Gordon is, and he's got positional versatility, it just makes all the sense in the world that Dennis Allen knows him, knows how to make it work with him. CJ Gardner-Johnson knows Dennis Allen, knows what he's getting into in Chicago, now has some experience with the defense. Part of the problem last year was CJ came here mid-season or whatever it was, 4 or 5 weeks into the year. He had to learn this defense on the fly. Now you give him a full off season of really getting to know it. He can settle in and be a little bit more comfortable and maybe even better next season than he was this past season. It's a question of, will he want to come back knowing he has to be a backup, or will he rather go somewhere where he could either get a starting job or have an open competition? He's not going to have a competition with Kyler Gordon to see who starts. If he signs here, he's the backup, and he has to be willing to do that here. He signed here mid-season when Kyler Gordon was hurt, knowing he would get the playing time. So that's where he's kind of in this, there's some conditions on whether or not he might come back here. Same kind of thing, I think, at left tackle with Braxton Jones in the same conversation. I would love to bring back Braxton Jones at a cheap price. He's a starting caliber left tackle with flaws for sure. We don't necessarily want him to be plan A, but given that he missed most of the season injured and also benched, he's not going to have a big market in free agency. So if I can get him back here at a near minimum, above minimum, you pay him a quality backup. So it's, $3 million, $4 million a year type of contract, whatever, the number ends up being. He's probably going to want to explore his options, see if he can go somewhere where he'll be able to compete to start. But he could compete to start in Chicago with Ozzie Trapillo dealing with this patellar tendon injury that he could miss the bulk of next season. We talked about the injury complications on the podcast last week as well. So go back and take a listen to that if you want more detail on why left tackle is a real open question mark this offseason. But I don't hate the idea of bring back Braxton Jones for one more year, a 1-year deal, give him a chance to start and hit free agency again next offseason to try and cash in on a much bigger deal, but a 1-year kind of prove it deal to maybe compete to start again, I would like. Now, given how this season went, Braxton Jones might say, no, screw you guys. You benched me, and then I got hurt, and you wouldn't even play me after Ozzie Trapillo got hurt. So, screw you guys. I'm going home. I'm taking my ball and playing somewhere else. He might just not want to come back, especially at a significant discount to what he was expecting to get this past offseason. But if he's willing to come back, I would absolutely take him. Same thing with Dominique Robinson at defensive end. If he's willing to come back to be a backup, to be 4th or 5th in the defensive end rotation, I'm taking Dominique Robinson back. I know he has not taken the kind of steps forward we would like to see. He's a 5th round pick, so, we can't have had too high of expectations. But, he's not somebody that's starting or anything like that. But Dominique Robinson is 2 things. One, a regular and reliable special teams player who plays on all the phases and is an athletic freak at defensive end that is valuable for you on special teams. But I also think even 4 years into Dominic Robinson's NFL career, he still is scratching the surface of his potential. Like, we knew when they drafted him in 2022, this was a player who converted a defensive line in college, had played quarterback and wide receiver up to that point. Like, even now as we enter 2026, Dominic Robinson has only been playing the position of defensive end for like 6 years of his life. You know, most defensive ends have been playing defensive line since high school or middle school. They have decades of defensive line experience. So to me, Dominic Robinson still has untapped potential. He's not going to become a 10-sack guy at this point, but even at age 27, I just think his best football is still in front of him, and I think there's still something you can tap into there. Not that I'm counting on that happening. I'm not paying him any kind of major dollars there at all, but for a cheap backup defensive end who's really good on special teams and still has some untapped potential, and you know him and has been in your system, like, I'd rather have him than some random backup defensive end off the street that you kind of know that they are what they are at this stage of their career. Robinson can maybe still give you more, and that to me is worth taking a chance on. And the last guy I'll throw in this category is the return man Devin Duvernay. 1 year deal he signed last season. He was fine this year. I'm not giving him any kind of raise, but on a cheap return bring back, he didn't muff a lot of kicks. I think he muffed one punt, but like otherwise steady returner. Got you some good yards, got some big returns. No touchdown, but some nice returns. He was reliable. You didn't have to think or worry about, what's going to happen with Duvernay back there. I would re-sign Duvernay at a cheap price, but I'm not giving him any kind of like big bump up in pay. And if some other team wants to pay him more, I'll replace him with somebody else. But I like what he's been able to do for me so far in this process. So those are kind of the guys that, like, price and willingness, I would like to have them back. There's a few other like glue guy type of players that I think are certainly, price is not going to be an issue for any of these guys, but just like, man, if it's really nice to make them a priority, to feel like they're valued because you just want them around on your roster, even if their impact is a little bit less visible. It's just the kind of guys that they're the unsung heroes that do some of the dirty work and give you some peace of mind as well to just kind of know that they're there. So we'll go through some of the lesser names that are still quite important next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by Indeed. Between workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inboxes overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open, sometimes there can be a lot of pressure on to get the right hire, and that means it's a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. We're talking about skills, experience, and location. So you're not just hoping that the right candidates stumble across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed's data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. There's less stress, less time, and more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is the job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help your job get the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. The Locked On Bears podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. If you ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person, well, FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your FanDuel Profit Boost on any NBA futures bet, and you'll automatically be entered in for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, the whole shebang. Flights, tickets, everything included. So if you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. Futures are so much fun at this time of year. Whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title, it adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can you pick your cash, but also it can send you to the finals. So visit FanDuel.com to get started and use your FanDuel Profit Boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So we went through the priority free agents to re-sign. The last few guys I want to run through here are not going to make or break your roster or your success this season, but they are the kind of guys that are just valuable beyond what we can measure fully in the stat sheet. These are guys that don't make a lot of noise, a lot of name for themselves, but like, man, when they've been able to contribute, like, it's really valuable to have them around. Like, one that jumps out at me right away is Case Keenum, the third string quarterback. Case Keenum should in no way see the field at any point next season. But you bring him in as that coach in the quarterback room to help guide Caleb Williams. And I think we're getting close to the time period where Caleb Williams no longer needs to have a veteran quarterback in the room, but I would like one more season of Case Keenum guiding him for a few reasons here. One, this is all still new for Caleb Williams, right? Like, it's year 2 in Ben Johnson's offense, but like, there's still going to be a lot to learn and a lot to guide through that. And Case Keenum is someone who is on the same level as Caleb Williams. It's one thing when it's your quarterback's coach telling you what to do, or your offensive coordinator telling you what to do, or your head coach telling you what to do. But like, Keenum is not Caleb's boss. He's his coworker. And I think we've all been in workplaces before where you just can't quite feel as buddy-buddy with your boss as you can your coworkers. You have that older coworker who's been doing the job for a long time, and you don't want to keep asking your boss for help because it makes you look bad as an employee, and it's like, oh, is he going to think I don't know what I'm doing if I keep trying to, there's just that, even if you have a really good relationship, there's inherently a power dynamic that exists between coach/boss and player/employee. And there's not quite the hiring-firing dynamic, but just that there's a power dynamic there of up and down, whereas like Keenum and Caleb are lateral, right? They're on the same level, so he can go to him, and someone who's out there practicing with him every day, going through the same physical grind that the coaches just aren't being a part of there. Especially now when you do lose offensive coordinator Declan Doyle, and you move Press Taylor into his role, but another voice out of that room. I'd like to keep as many helpful voices in that room for Caleb Williams as possible with someone like Case Keenum there. But then also, because Caleb is now in year 3 of his career and year 2 in Ben Johnson's offense, now every other team has had a full year to see what Caleb looks like in Ben Johnson's offense. His tendencies, the preferences, the plays they call, and opposing defensive coordinators are going to be a lot more prepared for what Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams are going to throw at them this year than they were last year. And so often we see sometimes quarterbacks will have a really good season, and then the next year they struggle because teams have adjusted to them. And you have to be able to make adjustments to the adjustments to stay one step ahead of your opponent. And I think a veteran quarterback like Case Keenum has been through that and seen that process time and time and time again to help Caleb Williams through that. So like, I really would like one more year of Case Keenum as the number 3 quarterback on this roster. And then from there, Caleb will be in year 4, moving forward, and Caleb will then be going to year 3 in Ben Johnson's offense. And I think from there, he's established enough to kind of say, you're on your own, kid. You've got this figured out, because he won't really be kid anymore. And so that's why I think Keenum's a glue guy that, sure, if you lose him, it's not going to be the difference between winning and losing football games necessarily, but I think it helps in ways that we can't quite measure. A couple of core special teams guys that I would also like to see brought back. Defensive end Daniel Hardy is one of your most versatile core special teams players that's been really valuable and effective. And then I've kind of come full circle on Elijah Hicks as a backup safety. I don't like the idea of Elijah Hicks having to start games for you at safety, but he might have been your best, most consistent special teams player last season. Like, he and Josh Blackwell are neck and neck for like Bears' best special teams player. Hicks led you in special teams tackles this past season. I don't think he may have missed one, but otherwise it was 1 or 0 missed tackles on special teams. Like, he is an ace, a special teams ace. And is a special teams ace the difference between winning and losing in games? I mean, maybe not, but boy, there's a reliability there that he's cheap. He's a backup, again, as someone who's to fill in as a starter. I don't love him as a safety. I would like a better backup safety, but you're not going to find a much better special teams player that knows your special team systems and your special teams coach, and Hardy, very similar in that regard. And then the last guy I throw in here is offensive lineman Jordan McFadden, who is technically, I believe, a restricted free agent. So he's probably not going to be able to test the market and go anywhere. But like, he started the last playoff game against the Rams. He's someone with guard and tackle versatility, and especially when you look at this Bears offensive line right now, and you've got Braxton Jones set to hit free agency, Ryan Bates set to hit free agency, Ozzie Trapillo injured. Like, McFadden's experience and versatility, and still having some upside as a, on the younger end of the offensive line spectrum. He's 26 right now. Like, he's not a young pup, but he's not old either. Like, he's just entering the prime of his career. I think there's still better football in the future of Jordan McFadden, plus versatility, plus depth. Like, valuable, cheap offensive line depth with some experience is something that is easy to take for granted. And McFadden provides that in a way that I absolutely would like to keep around. Sure, it's replaceable, but like, you got one in your hand. He's a valuable piece to have there. I'm all for bringing him back and making that a priority. So those are the guys to me that are the main re-sign players. I think we mentioned 10 different guys there. Like, it's not nothing out of the 25. But you'll notice then that there's 15 other guys we didn't talk about there. And that doesn't mean all 15 guys are bums who the Bears should cast aside. But I think there's a number of guys that I'm not willing to pay big money for, or I just don't really want back because the quality of play just hasn't been worth it. So on tomorrow's podcast, we'll go through some of the names that I don't want to see the Bears re-sign, that I think they should let walk. And there's a handful of guys that kind of fall in between where it's like, I don't know, take them or leave them, flip a coin. I don't think it's a big deal either way. And we may have to mention them in there too. But I wanted to start with like the Big 10 and really the Big 2, followed by the 8 others that I think should be, more of a priority to get a deal done before free agency if I'm Ryan Poles. Make sure, though, you hit the subscribe button for Locked On Bears so you can come back for tomorrow's podcast for the players that we're going to let walk, whether it's on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. I do want to thank you for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, so make sure you tune in again tomorrow for that show, because each and every day that you tune in is another opportunity for you to bear down.